Remember, they also have interest in your business, believe it or not. The more you are successful, the more you're going to buy from them. Or sometimes you become a threat. Yes, there is that element that sometimes you become a threat in a way that you might become so successful that you build your own brand or your own production or whatever it is that you're buying from them. You can end up doing it. But if you're transparent and open about it and you know where you're going in terms of your strategy, make them feel at ease. With the communication plan, then it makes it easier. Remember, I personally believe in systems. To say many small businesses fail because they don't have systems in place. They don't do certain things consistently the way they're supposed to do them. So if you're not doing certain things consistently, then it becomes a problem. Because certain things fall between the cracks. And certain stakeholders will feel neglected. Good day. Welcome to another lesson on our Super Dealmaker Entrepreneurship Master Program. Today we're looking at the skills program, how to manage stakeholders. And the topic today is how to communicate with stakeholders. Okay, so now it's our third lesson. We did the introduction, we did how to identify the stakeholders, we did a module on how to identify the stakeholder requirements, and then today we're looking at how you communicate with stakeholders. And I'll just give you a brief background on stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are key institutions or key individuals or organizations that have interest in your business. They can be community members, employees, suppliers, maybe government, and shareholders. Those become your key stakeholders that whatever you do, you need to make sure that you meet. Okay, you can't always meet their requirements, but your requirements and their expectations are aligned so that you can run a very successful business. So with stakeholders, as I said, that these five key, you can have different stakeholders. If you are exporting, you can have the export market and compliance, your HACCP and all those people that you need to comply with. They become your key stakeholder. Your landlord become your key stakeholder. So you have a lot of key stakeholders in your business. People who have vested interest in your business. Some, they want your business to succeed. Some, they might have a bad intention to want your business to fail. So those are your stakeholders. The intention of stakeholder management is to try and make sure that you align, you understand their requirement, and you engage regularly so that you understand what they are looking for, what do they expect, and then on the other side, you try and meet their expectation, you engage, you negotiate, you settle on certain things so that you have a smooth relationship with the stakeholders. Because it's very, very important because they are key on making sure that your business is successful. You can't succeed without stakeholders. And most businesses or most small businesses, they don't have a strategy on how to manage the stakeholders. And as a result, that leaves a lot of opportunities on the table. Because the stakeholders, if they are aligned with you, if they are supporting your business fully, they are motivated, they are loyal, they are committed, your business will likely to be successful because you'll have committed and motivated employees. Suppliers that are working with you, they're giving you discount, they're giving you the best deals. A community that is supporting you. On the government side, government that is you are working harmoniously with, because you build that relationship, you communicate with them regularly. And on the other side, you'll have your shareholders that you have common vision in terms of where the business is going. So today's lesson, we're looking at how do you communicate with stakeholders, the type of message, communication method, regular communication. What should you do to make sure that you stay engaged with the stakeholders, because sometimes you can have that initial engagement, but you don't continue engaging. Communication with stakeholders mainly, it's also related to your marketing effort, because with marketing you can do your marketing and you stop thinking that people now know your brand or your business. But you know the concept of out of sight, out of mind. So if people are not seeing you, they're not hearing from you, you are not regularly engaging with them, they tend to forget you. So that's where the stakeholder communication comes in, to say you need to be strategic about it, and you need to be intentional about it, and you need to have an engagement plan. We're going to look at the module of stakeholder engagement, how do you do it, and the method and the approach that you're supposed to use. But today we're looking at how do you communicate with them. It's like with the communication, it's like to big brands, they advertise regularly. They don't say we are known, then we no longer advertising because people know us. It doesn't work like that. But it also really depends on the type of brand that you operating, because sometimes you need to be exclusive and all that. You don't have to advertise to avoid mass client. You are dealing with maybe specific sector that you want to keep it that way, that you become exclusive. It's like Rolls-Royce. They say they don't advertise on TV because their people don't watch TV. Those are the type of things that you need to keep in mind. Even with the communication, you need to understand your stakeholders, how you communicate with your stakeholders, the message that you sending out to your stakeholder. And the other thing that, okay, on one side, Rolls-Royce is not advertising, but on the other side, I remember Unisa, the mill brand. This made a decision to say we are no longer advertising because people know us. We are out there in the market. Everyone knows us, so the people will just buy because we're a household brand. And that's where they made a mistake, because they were very dominant in the market, and their brand was so trusted, and people knew the Iwisa brand as a brand to go to. But when they stopped advertising, then the other brands, they started increasing their marketing, their advertising, and it lost serious market share. That when they woke up to it, the market share was already gone. Now it became a bloodbath in the mill sector, because the Tom, Dick and Harry was seeing the opportunity there. So they had the market locked down. They had active marketing. They were making sure that they are in people's face and all that. So previously it made it difficult for other brands to penetrate that market. But once they stopped advertising, then the other brands pushed their advertising message and all that. Then they started eating into their market share. By the time they realized it was too late. The other brands were already have their nails in, pushing in that space. So Iwisa was never able to recover to its former glory. Even today, the market share is split averagely between many brands. So it's no longer dominant. People no longer buying it as the brand because they stopped advertising. They stopped communicating with their customers. This is similar to your stakeholder engagement. Out of sight, out of mind, out of sight. You need to make sure that you constantly communicate with your stakeholders. There might be opportunities, there might be areas where you can improve, but because you're not in constant communication with them, then they will forget about you if they have deals that they can offer you, like your suppliers. And if the employees don't communicate with them regularly, they can lose motivation, or they can be despondent because there are certain things that they want to address, but there is no communication in terms of the message. As well, we find that sometimes businesses are struggling. It happens. You go through phases as a small business. You are struggling, but you're not communicating with your employees in terms of where are you as a business, where the business is going, the challenges within the business. Then the employees, sometimes they don't get paid, but they don't understand what's going on in the business. So obviously they will be very unhappy. And if you have angry employees, then they will obviously not be motivated. They might start stealing from you. They might start giving poor service to your customers. So if you don't communicate regularly in terms of the status, where you are, in terms of when it comes to the business, the performance and all that. Yes, if all is hunky-dory, you're performing well, you can get away with not communicating. But that now can catch up with you a little bit later on when things change. Things are not constant. The market change, the environment change. So those changes can cause problems within the business. Because when you were doing well, you're not communicating. But when you start struggling, now it's when you're starting to open that communication channel between you and the employees. Then, not obviously, but most of the time, then the employee will mistrust you to say, yo, this management, when we're doing well, we're performing, they're not talking to us, they were not engaging us, they were not interested in how we're doing, to understand where we are. But now, because we're not doing well, they are starting to engage, they're starting to talk to us. So it will build that mistrust between the employees and the organization. So regular communication between you and the stakeholders is very, very, very important. You need to communicate regularly. And then it also goes with the community. If you are in a community, if you're not doing well, the community needs to understand that you can't participate in certain activities. You can't sponsor certain things. You can't be active in community events because your business is struggling, you're not doing well. And then when you're doing well as well, you need to communicate to say things are good, whatever. I will be able to maybe contribute here, participate here, do this community, social responsibility and all that. So even when it comes to the community, you need to make sure that you regularly communicate. Obviously, you're not going to tell the community everything about your business, but they need to have an understanding on the information that you're sharing with them. So it comes as well to say you need to share relevant information. Not everything within the organization, depending on the stakeholders. If things are going well, there are certain things that you can communicate to the community. Because if you tell the community that, hey, now we are making lots and lots of profits, they'll come for charity and all those things. And then if you don't assist them, they'll be angry that, no, he said or she said the business is doing well. Now we come for support. They are not supporting us. So you need to be clear in terms of the message that you're communicating. You must only communicate relevant information to the community. Actually to all stakeholders, not only into community. I'm just giving you an example on the community side to say you need to make sure that you share relevant information. And remember, when I'm saying community, you mustn't mistake it to only referring to the people living around your business. Sometimes that community is not even interested in the business. You're operating in town or in the suburbs somewhere. That community might not be interested in your business, right? But if let's say you are a mine operating in some area, that community will have vested interest in your business. So you need to going back to identifying. We've done that lesson on how you identify key stakeholders. So when I'm saying communicate with communities, I'm not just saying you need to go out there and just communicate with the community. You might not even be servicing that community. So you need to look at the relevant community members that you should communicate with. If you are in the industrial park, The community might be the tenants, the companies that are in that park. If you're in the mall, it might be the shops there. If you're in the suburb, there might be relevant people that you are engaging with. If you are in the rural areas, it might be the whole community. So it depends on your business. Where are you? The type of operation, and you need to be able to identify the community that is relevant to you, because relevance is very, very important. So the relevant community or relevant stakeholders, and you need to make sure that you communicate relevant information. That's now relativity. You don't just communicate everything to everyone the same message. Communication to employee will be different to communication with a community. Communication with community will be different communication with suppliers, because sometimes with the suppliers you can go into details in terms of the challenges that you're facing as a business when you are talking to your supplier. Because remember, the suppliers are key. You are buying from them. Even if you don't tell them that, hey, I'm not performing well, the things are not moving, because they know how many things you order per month, per year, whatever, per day. Then they will see the trend and they'll be able to identify it, that one is struggling, or hey, that one is doing well, what. So you trying to hide things from your supplier, it might just build that mistrust between you and your supplier. And in time of needs, when you need their support, because it's not always, you might start a business and it just goes fly and you never need any support from anyone. But if you build that good relationship, that communication, you open the communication channels between you and your supplier or suppliers, then they will be able to see, even when you're doing well, they might be willing to give you discounts. They might be willing to give you terms on your trade and all that. They might be willing to negotiate certain things. They might even share. Because remember, if you are buying from a supplier, the supplier might be supplying other people or other institutions, right? So there might be, the supplier might have certain information that they can share with you, that other suppliers are doing or other customers are doing that are in the same, call it the same space as you. They can share with you, this one is doing this one is doing that, so that you can also learn from the other suppliers. But if you don't communicate with your suppliers, you don't have a good communication channel, the doors are not open, you don't have engagement with your suppliers, you might not be privy to that information. But remember, information is power. So you must always be tuned in when it comes to your stakeholders, so that you open that communication channels between you and your suppliers. You are transparent in terms of how you communicate. You identify relevant information that you need to share with them. But with the suppliers, it's important that you keep them close, because most businesses, the margins are in your supply chain, from the supplier to the customer. That supply chain, that's where money is made. And if you are not looking after that supply chain in terms of engagement, in terms of communication, you might be leaving money on the table. Because if you are open with your suppliers, then, as I said, they might share certain information. They might be able to give you discount. They might give you mentorship and support and all that. So you must be able to communicate with them, understand the type of suppliers that you are dealing with, and the type of communication that they will prefer. Obviously, that it goes back to your stakeholder engagement plan. But you need to have a proper stakeholder engagement plan for you to be able to communicate. And the communication component, it comes from that stakeholder engagement plan. Whereas remember, I continue to say, you're not operating as an island. You need to make sure that there is good relationship, there is harmony within your space, how you operate, and engagement with your stakeholders. And when it comes to suppliers are the cornerstone of your business. Because sometimes they might frustrate you. They might not give you the best product. They might not give you the best price. They might not give you the latest products or the relevant products. Or they might not recommend certain things that you can buy because you don't have a good relationship with them. Because you see them as just another entity that you're buying from. But if you come up with a communication strategy, how you communicate with them, how do you engage with them, then that now will make them open a bit to you, make them to trust you. Because remember, trust comes when it comes to stakeholders, it comes from communication. As long as you are clear, you give them relevant information, and you are transparent, and you communicate with them on a regular basis, then you will build that comfort. They will be comfortable around you. They will be able to share, call it secrets with you in terms of how you can optimize your business, how you can do better, or the products that you can add, product lines that you can add to your business. So if you're not building a good relationship with your suppliers, as I said earlier, you might be leaving money on the table. You might not get the best prices. So you need to make sure that that channel of communication is open. You engage regularly with them. You have a method of engaging, but don't be manipulative in your message. Be open, be transparent, and make sure that the communication is also two-way. You engage with them, you ask information, you ask, because your suppliers, they can play a very, very important, call it a mentorship role even in your business. Remember, you find that you're not the only one who's buying from your suppliers. So if you don't build that good relationship with them, they might not share other information from the industry, because you don't say much. You just come and buy whatever that you're buying. You don't communicate with them. Then yes, they'll sell you what you're looking for. But if you communicate with them, you have a communication plan, you engage with them, you solicit advice and all that, then they will be a little bit open to assisting you. They will be a little bit open to supporting you to make sure that your business is successful. Remember, as much as I'm saying it is your responsibility to open that communication channel between you and your suppliers, but remember, they also have interest in your business. Believe it or not, the more you are successful, the more you're going to buy from them. Or sometimes you become a threat. Yes, there is that element that sometimes you become a threat in a way that you might become so successful that you build your own brand or your own production or whatever it is that you're buying from them. You can end up doing it. But if you're transparent and open about it and you know where you're going in terms of your strategy, make them feel at ease when they're dealing with you. They must not be suspicious. If you're doing well and you share the information, relevant information, so that they are at ease when they're supporting you, they know they can trust you. But if you're not talking to them, don't make speculations. They might want to sabotage you. Hey, this one is doing well. He might end up buying from us. Or this one is buying less quantities. That means he's buying somewhere else. Then they start treating you badly because they believe that maybe you are buying from competitors. But if you are communicating with them, you are open, you have a way of communicating, and they understand where you are as a business, they wouldn't have a reason not to trust you. And if they trust you, then they become open, then they communicate easily with you. That's where communication channels becomes very important when it comes to stakeholder engagement. You need to make sure that you communicate clearly. And the other thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to communication, you need to be accessible. Okay, accessibility obviously it's relative. To employee, you need to always be accessible. To community members, not all people are supposed to just walk in and you are accessible, because you will end up not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is doing your job. With suppliers, you also need to be accessible, because if they need to share information, meetings and all those things, they are relevant. Yes, you might have pressure in terms of production or service, but make yourself accessible to your stakeholders. It will make your life and their life a little bit easier. Communication will be a little bit better. And the other thing is you need to be consistent. Consistency. And they're saying that even in this, communication with stakeholders is similar to your marketing programs. Because they say sometimes if you are not consistent with your message in communication and all that, people lose, they'll lose you lose certain people, certain customers along the way. It's like when you're doing content marketing, for argument's sake. If you're posting things, you are doing certain things, you're communicating with, you're sharing knowledge with your potential customers. If you do it on a regular basis, then you build trust with your audience. They know that maybe on the certain day, certain things are coming, this thing is going to happen and all that. But people believe in consistency. Because if you are erratic, they don't know when you're doing certain things. So it's similar to communication. You can't be erratic. If they know that you regularly maybe follow up, send them a monthly newsletter, you send them a monthly communication to update them and all that. If you do it consistently, then they know what to expect and when to expect it. So now when you build that expectation, then the relationship becomes smoother if you are consistent. So even when it comes to your communication with stakeholders, make sure that you remain consistent. Consistently communicate, be clear, be transparent, communicate on the regular basis. Obviously, communicating once a year, it might be consistency. But in this case, as well, depending on the type of stakeholders you're dealing with, regular communication, it goes a long way. It will build that relationship, it will build that loyalty, that trust between you and your stakeholders. And as I said earlier, and I continue to say throughout this lesson, that your business is made up of stakeholders. Without those stakeholders, your business might not be successful. You might struggle. You might do well. Obviously, it's not given that you will struggle. But if you don't build that relationship, if something goes wrong, if somebody breaks into your business, somebody might have seen something, but because you don't have a relationship, they might not even tell you. There might be maybe suspicious activities happening. But because you don't build a relationship with the community around you, the shops, the firms, whoever is your community stakeholder, then certain things might be going on around you. And you might not even know about it. Because you don't have, you're not accessible. You don't have a method of communication. They don't know you, basically. Because if you don't communicate, obviously, you won't have a good relationship with your stakeholders. You might not have access to certain information that if you had an open communication, you were regularly communicating with your stakeholders, you might have access to. It's free, that information, and it's critical. It might give you an advantage. There might be a new shop opening. There might be somebody else who's doing something. There might be things happening in the community that can change your business like that. But you might not know because you're not communicating with your community. You're not communicating with your stakeholders. You don't have open communication with your employees. You don't talk to other businesses around you. You don't talk to the people around you, the community around you. So certain things might be happening, certain trends. They might pick up certain trends that if they shared with you, you might change your business strategy or you might change your business approach. But because you're not communicating, you're not talking to your stakeholders. And on the other side, because remember, communication as well is two-way. On the other side, your stakeholders, they don't know how to communicate with you. Or they don't even know if they should communicate with you. So it will be difficult for them to just voluntarily share that information, the industry information, activities that are happening in the community or within your sector and all that, because they don't know how you're going to take the information because you are not communicating. So it's a two-way thing. Information might be there, you might not access it because you are not communicating with your stakeholders. So it is key to have a communication strategy that is clear, transparent, consistent on a regular basis, and make sure that you maintain it, you do it consistently as you possibly could, so that your stakeholders can trust you. They can be able to share information with you. Now, we just highlighted in the environment or the landscape of communicating with stakeholders. Now, we're going to communicating with them. How do you do it? The first thing is obviously you need to identify the stakeholders. We went in detail in terms of how you identify your key stakeholders. If you don't know how, there is a module that we have done previously on how to identify your key stakeholders. You go through that module to understand who are the stakeholders, to define them. Remember, as I said, that in this module or in this lesson, we're only focusing on those key ones: the shareholders, the suppliers, the community, employee, and government. Okay, less so with government, because government engagement and communication is standardized. So I'm giving you examples around, or the processes or strategies around these 4 key stakeholders, which is the community. And I continuously say community is not necessarily the residents around you. It could be the other companies, it could be other corporates, it could be people that you are operating with in the certain area. So identify the relevant communities that you need to engage with. Suppliers are people that you supply you with products, services. You have employees, and then you have shareholders, people who own equity in your business. Those are the stakeholders that you need to identify. And then after identifying your stakeholders, you need to identify your stakeholder requirements or your stakeholder needs. What do they need from your business? As well, we've done stakeholder requirements. If you missed the lesson, go back and listen, read, or take a quiz on how to identify stakeholders' requirements. And then after you identify their requirements, remember there are certain things that they will be expecting from you, and there are certain things that you are expecting from them. So what you need to do as a business is to make sure that you understand that, you engage on that, you fine-tune it. There are certain things that you agree on, and there are certain things that you don't agree on. Then, as a business, you go back and work on the things that you agree on, that you believe you will be able to achieve from their requirements or from their needs. And then, after that, you need to identify, call it an appropriate communication channel. How do you communicate with them? Obviously, suppliers, it might be through email, phone calls, easy. Community, you might have to be participating in community forums and tenants meetings, and maybe traditional council meetings and all those things. So it depends on the type of stakeholders that you're dealing with. So as I said, that when it comes to suppliers, it might be one-on-one meeting, might be through emails, might be through phone call. The community might be tricky because you might have to have maybe study groups, meetings, community forums, and all those things. You can communicate through that. And then when it comes to employees, it might be through performance reviews, one-on-ones, open door policy, and all that. And the shareholders, it might be through shareholders meetings, strategic sessions, and all that. So you need to identify the communication channels that you are going to use to communicate with your stakeholders. But it shouldn't be, it could be, shouldn't be one size fit all. I'm just sending a monthly, I'd call it a monthly update to the stakeholder, or quarterly update to shareholders, employees, community, and the suppliers. That can work, but to communicate effectively, you need to identify the stakeholder, their needs, and the preferred method of communicating. That Because communication is to make things easier between you and the stakeholder. So you might find the other stakeholders doesn't have access to email, they don't have time for meetings and all those things. So you need to understand that stakeholder, their requirements, so that you can strategize in terms of the communication channels that you're going to use. And once you have identified the channel that you're going to use to communicate with your stakeholders, then you get to a communication plan. Right. How are we going to do it? When? Who? How? Where? What you're going to communicate. So those are the questions that you need to think about to come up with the strategy that you're going to use in terms of the communication plan. To say, because if you don't put this thing in your communication plan, it becomes a challenge because you might not be regular. So the best thing that maybe you can do, maybe at Super Dealmaker, we have a stakeholder management platform. You just log on into Super Dealmaker, you log on and you go into the stakeholder platform. Then in there, you can create your stakeholder management project plan. It basically plans the activities that you need to do, who you need to communicate with, when you're supposed to communicate with, and it sends you, once you finalize that plan, it sends you the diary with the appointments or with the activities that you're supposed to do. Because if you don't sit and come up with your communication plan with the dates and what you're going to be communicating when, obviously some communication channel method or some stakeholders will fall between the cracks. So, but if you have we're managing this stakeholder management as a project, like how the Super Dealmaker app will help you do, you will make sure that you communicate with all the stakeholders. Make sure that you have diarized activities so that you know on this specific date, I will be communicating with the stakeholders. This is what I'm supposed to be sending. And the nice thing about the Super Dealmaker stakeholder management platform, you will be able to allocate even the team members who's supposed to be doing what. And even those activities will be sent to their calendar so that you can communicate depending on who you task with that communication. You tasked with the responsibility of communicating. That person will know which activities needs to happen when. So that when the date comes, you need to send your quarterly communication or quarterly updates to your stakeholders. Whoever who's supposed to collate the information or put together certain things, they know when they're supposed to do it, so that it allows you to be able to send out that communication. So the Super Dealmaker platform helps you to manage your stakeholders. It makes it easy to manage your stakeholders, because if you don't diarize it, if you don't have a communication plan, then it becomes a problem. Things will fall between the cracks. So make sure that you have a communication plan on when to communicate, which stakeholders you're gonna send the information, what information you're gonna send, which method of communication you're going to use, and who are the stakeholders that you're gonna communicate with, and with what. So now with the communication plan, then it makes it easier. Remember, I personally believe in systems. To say many small businesses fail because they don't have systems in place. They don't do certain things consistently the way they're supposed to do them. So if you're not doing certain things consistently, then it becomes a problem, because certain things fall between the cracks and certain stakeholders will feel neglected. Certain stakeholders will feel that you're not engaging with them, and that will build mistrust between you and that stakeholder. So you need to have the communication plan, but systematize everything that you do. Make sure that you do things within a system so that you bring that consistency in your business, so that your stakeholders will know what to expect and when to expect it and what to expect, so that it becomes very, very important. They will be waiting for the communication to say, hey, today is that day that I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4. They look forward to it. And remember, with the communication, it's not, as I say, it's the two-way thing. You will communicate, they will communicate. Take their inputs into consideration. Take their feedback into consideration and continuously improve your communication plan. Because sometimes you can be just stubborn and say, this is what I need to communicate, but without getting feedback from your stakeholders. So you need to make sure that when you communicate, it's a two-way thing. You share your information, you allow them to share the information, you give them feedback. Also, you must be willing to receive feedback. And obviously, you will evaluate the feedback. And after you considered whatever they are saying, then you can incorporate that into your communication plan. It's important that you listen. Remember, with communication, listening is important. As much as communicating the information or sharing the information, listening to your stakeholders also becomes very, very critical. And when you're communicating, the other thing that you need to consider is the clarity on your message and the way you communicate your message. Remember, sometimes you might be running a complex business that maybe your ordinary Joe will not understand what you do. So you need to find a language and the way of sending a message that ordinary Joe will be able to understand. So that it doesn't become, because if they don't understand the content, then the interest is not there. They might not even read, they might not even listen to what you say. So make sure that the way you communicate is very, very clear and concise, and is direct and to the level of the stakeholder that you're communicating with. Because it doesn't help you communicating things above their head where they don't even understand what you say. So it's very, very important to make sure that when you communicate, you are communicating in a language that is understandable. Most especially when you're maybe communicating with employees, or you can talk maybe, I don't know, return on equity, you can talk fancy things, right? But you must bring it to their level to say, what does it mean when you're talking about maybe return on asset, return on equity, profit, turnover, and all those things. You might assume they know, but you need to make sure that you are on the same wavelength with the stakeholder that you're communicating with. Same thing if you are communicating with your community. If it's a residential local community, the education levels are different. So when you're sending out your message, you must send out a message at the level of your stakeholders. They need to be understanding. Maybe with the shareholders as well, maybe they might be, the knowledge might be higher than of that in terms of your business, of the community. So the communication obviously will be different. The content that you share with that community might be different to the content that you share with the employees, and what you share with the employees might be different to what you share with the shareholders. And what you share with the shareholders might be different to what you share with your suppliers. It's very, very important to understand the needs analysis. That's why those requirements, identify requirements, we made it as a one module so that you're clear. You'll be able to assess the needs of that those stakeholders, so that even when you're communicating, you know what to communicate and how to communicate. Okay, so you must not just do a blanket communication. It might not have the effect or the understanding that it will have from different sectors. So you must be conscious of your stakeholders when you're communicating. It must not just be a blanket communication. And I said, when you're communicating, it must be regular. Communicate on a regular basis. You can't have enough communication. And soliciting feedback. You must always get feedback. Communication is not one way, because one way you're just talking to them, talking down on them. But with communication, it's a two-way. When you're receiving feedback, make sure that you address the issues that they've raised. And if there are certain issues that you won't be able to address, engage on those issues. To show them reasons why maybe you wouldn't be able to address their concerns. Or you'll be able to address certain concerns and you have maybe challenges with certain concerns, then that's where it will make it easier for them to understand that, no, but we're communicating, we're sending feedback, but they are not taking our feedback into consideration. That's the biggest complaint that employees can always have with management. To say, we give them feedback, but they don't do anything about it. Even the community, that's where most of the time the conflicts happen between a business and the community. Because you'll send communication, maybe they respond, they raise concerns, and maybe they raise unreasonable concerns. But instead of addressing those concerns, or maybe you might not be able to address them, instead of going back and engaging with the community, then you just leave them there. Then that community or the employees or the shareholders, they create that thing to say, you are not listening to them. And that can cause conflict. We have a module usually on conflict resolution between the stakeholders, but the main thing with the communication plan is to avoid getting to a conflict resolution. Because conflict resolution now is time consuming, there are emotions involved, it's taxing. So if you can avoid getting to conflict, that's the best way to do it. So that's the communication plan and why you should communicate regularly, and you seek stakeholders and you address the concerns. If there are any concerns between you and the stakeholder, make sure that as you resolving those concerns, you regularly communicating with that particular stakeholder so that they can trust you. That, okay, we wanted this and this, and they said they wouldn't be able to do it because of 1, 2, 3, 4. They might not be buying what you say, but at least you would have communicated. You would have told them that, no, I can't do certain things because of 1, 2, 3, 4. Employees, suppliers, communities, yes, there will always be that unhappiness. But I think they will trust you to say, okay, they told us they wouldn't be able to do this. Rather than keeping quiet, they're making assumptions. Because if you're not communicating back, if they raise concerns and you are not communicating back, they might make their own assumptions. To say, hey, they're not doing 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're not telling us why they're not doing 1, 2, 3, 4. And when they start making assumptions, then it becomes a problem. Because they might assume certain things that are not true. Or they're likely to assume certain things that are not true. So make sure that your communication channels are open. You understand you have identified the stakeholders. You identify how you're going, to identify their needs. You identified how you're going to communicate with them. You develop your communication plan. And you make sure that is consistent, is clear, and is you communicate with them regularly. You seek feedback from them, and you address the feedback that you get from them, so that your communication is continuously effective. Because you can communicate effectively initially, but if you don't address the feedbacks and the concerns, then it becomes a challenge. You might not be communicating, you might be sending information to them, and they send you back information, but you are not talking to each other. Because communication is different. Sending information, receiving information is different. But if you are talking and you are engaging, and you understand where someone is coming from, they understand where you're coming from, and you seek to find each other in terms of your needs, their demands, and all that, then you are communicating. You're not sending information. So it might be a little bit different to sending information, just sending information. Communication is where you're engaging with your stakeholder. You find each other, you understand where they are, and they understand where you are. All right, so just to recap on the communication considerations, right? as I said, you need to have clear objectives. One, the message. Two, the message must be tailored to that specific stakeholders that you're communicating with, right? Three, you need to be proactive. Send communication or share communication, but actively seek feedback from your stakeholders. Make sure that you are proactive in that. Use appropriate channels. Remember I said your stakeholders are different. When you're talking to suppliers, it might be different to talking to employees, talking to government, talking to community. So, make sure that you use appropriate channels. Method in terms of use visuals, like when sending communication, it must not be a text heavy. It must be easy to consume, maybe using visuals and all that, so that your stakeholders can easily consume your communication, right? Remember, and I said engagement is a two-way thing. Communication is a two-way thing. It's not one-way street. So you need to make sure that you're not sending information. You are actually communicating with your stakeholders. Make sure that you're transparent in how you communicate. Be open. Remember, transparency doesn't mean sharing everything. There are certain stakeholders that you can share certain information with, and there are certain stakeholders that you can't share with. You can't share certain information. So you need to make sure that you are transparent, given the type of stakeholder that you are dealing with. Okay, and then also what you need to consider as well is to manage the conflicts. If there are any conflicts, make sure that you actively manage those conflicts. Because if you don't manage the conflicts, they might create a gap between you and your stakeholders, and that can have bad or not so good results for your business. And lastly, second last, cultural differences. Remember, as you're communicating, not only with stakeholders, but communication in general, you need to make sure that you consider the cultural differences between the person or the organization that you're communicating with. They are different. Communities are different. Shareholders are different. Employees are different. They come from different cultural backgrounds. So when you're communicating, make sure that you take those into consideration, because you can't just have a blanket communication. It will not, yes, you can, but it will not be effective. So it's for you to have effective communication. It shouldn't be a blanket communication. You need to take into account the cultural differences of your stakeholders. Even with the communities, I emphasize, it might be a residential community, you are operating within a residential place. The cultural differences within the community exist, and you need to find a way to accommodate that in your communication. Or your community might be in a complex, industrial complex. There are different community altogether to a community in the residential space. How you communicate with your core tenants or the people that you are operating within the same space, it will be different. And different organizations have different cultures and all that. So you need to keep that in mind. If you're talking to employees and all that, cultural difference is important, because sometimes it compromises. You might want to communicate a very good message, but because of cultural differences, the message is not coming through, because one culture might interpret it differently compared to the other culture. So you need to make sure that you understand the cultural differences and how these communities, these stakeholders are doing things, so that you can make sure that the method that you use to communicate, it accommodates their culture. Okay, and then the last one is on documentation. Make sure that your communication plan, your communication messages are all documented. If you have meetings with communities, make sure that you take minutes, because one person can have a meeting and leave the organization, and that communication that happened there, it will get lost. And when from the community side or whoever that you're engaging with side, it wouldn't be because somebody resigned. it will be because you don't care, because you decided not to come back. And you might find that they are angry wherever they are because you entered into maybe compromises, agreements during that meeting. But because you didn't document the meetings, then it gets lost in the process, and you are able to communicate, and that can create conflict. And as I said earlier, we're not looking for conflict. Actually, stakeholder engagement or stakeholder management is actually designed to eliminate conflicts. You're trying to eliminate conflicts even before they arise. So, in your communication, if you're not documenting it, if you don't have a system in place to manage the communication, then you might even actually be making things worse. You might be creating that conflict. So you need to avoid creating conflicts by making sure that the meetings are documented. Things are documented that the way they're supposed to be. And you know that if you have a system that way, even if I'm not there, or whoever that attended the meeting, they are not there, you know what was communicated. And you know what is expected from you. Then that engagement or that communication can continue with the person or without the person who attended the meeting. So creating a system, it will make sure that you easily manage the relationships. Things are not falling between the cracks. That's very, very important when it comes to communication. So those are the things that you need to consider when you're communicating with the stakeholder. But actually, it's not only relevant to stakeholders. Even if when you're doing the marketing, when you're even doing the campaigns, make sure that you follow these principles. You consider these things, that communication is a two-way. You need to be clear. The message needs to be tailor-made to whoever that you're communicating with. You need to make sure that you use appropriate channels. You need to make sure that it's not text-heavy. Whatever you use into communication, it's got some visuals in it. You are encouraging two-way, you are transparent in your communication, and you are managing conflict. So it's not only these communication strategies or considerations are not only applicable to when you're communicating with stakeholders, they're applicable when you are communicating in general. When you're communicating, it's either you're doing your marketing campaigns, you're communicating with customers, or you're communicating with stakeholders. You need to follow the same principle. And one thing, you can see that generally, in my view, I take out customers out of these stakeholders that you're talking about. Because customers you need to have your own way of engaging the customers under your marketing strategies or access to market. You can go watch the module or the skills program on Super Dealmaker, how to access markets. Then you are dealing with communication when it comes to customers, how you engage customers, and how you communicate with customers, and the strategies that you can use there. So we separated, we removed the customers from these stakeholders that we're talking about. We're talking mainly everyone else except your customers. Because dealing with customers is a little bit on its own, because businesses are built for customers. So how you engage and communicate with customers is got its own module that you can go. It's called Access to Markets on Super Dealmaker. Make sure that you go through that. This one is mainly targeted to stakeholders. So make sure that you don't confuse the two. Yes, the way you engage, they are more or less similar. But this one is customized to how you engage with stakeholders. And the other one is customized to how you engage with customers. So there are two different, species or kettle of fish, whatever the analogy is. So this one is designed for communicating with your stakeholders. It must be clear. But as I said, it is relevant as well. We're not dealing with that. Consider these things that we have touched here on this module. Okay. Then the next topic is on the frequency of communication. How frequent should you communicate with your stakeholders? it depends. There is no standard communication frequency or intervals. But they are mainly, remember, with communication and in a business, it depends where you are. Remember, stakeholders can be for the business, right? And as I was going through this, I was talking about stakeholders in the business concept, not necessarily project. If you want to understand how specifically how you deal with stakeholders when it comes to the project, you can go into our project, how to manage a project. In that module, we talk about managing stakeholders in a project context. Here, we're talking about managing stakeholders in the business context. But remember, even a business itself, it's like a project. You initiate it, you plan it, you do your business planning, you have implementation phase, you make decisions, and then you eventually exit the business, if you're going to exit the business. Or the longest period will be on the implementation side. You're implementing your strategies and you're growing and all that. So this stakeholder engagement is in the business context, not necessarily on the project context. So when do you engage your stakeholders as a business? First, it will be on the business initiation or project initiation. When you're starting up, you need to deal with your CPRO, you need to engage your suppliers to say, will you supply me if I were to start this business? Community, will you support me if I'm planning to do this? Government, do I comply with your requirements? That's on the initial stages. That's what you need to do to engage your stakeholders. To know that you are covered. You have your community, you have your suppliers, you have potential employees, you have government that is supporting you. And you have the shareholders that might come on board to fund the project if you're not funding it yourself. That's the communication. That's how you should communicate, and initially, obviously regularly, until you get the necessary approvals. That's on the initial phases. Don't go start a project without the support of government or approvals from government, approvals from shareholders and funders, approvals from the community, approvals from your supplier, being sure that you will be able to get the relevant skills or the relevant employees. That's communication on the initial phase. So on that level, you might do it as regular as you can so that you pass that phase. On the planning phase, obviously you need to keep the same stakeholders in the loop in terms of how the project is progressing, right? Then the main or the most of the communication will be happening during operations. As you are operating, because hopefully your business will be running for a long time. So because it's a long-term project, or it will be long-term activities, so your communication plan in that space becomes long-term. The plan that you're developing should also take into account that it's long-term. And you have other things to do in between. But on the planning phase, you might be focused on establishing the project. So you might be able to communicate more regularly than on the implementation phase. But at the initial phase, you need approvals, you need support, you need a source of your inputs into your product, you need employees. So your communication plan will be a little bit different than in the implementation phase. But in the implementation phase, things will be a little bit stable. You'll be developing the business or whatever, building the business, but you're doing more or less the same things. So the communication maybe might slow down in the implementation process. Okay. And then sometimes there are critical decision points where you need to make decisions on maybe strategic direction of the business, a way forward and all that. At that point as well, you need to have a proper communication plan. Maybe you're deciding that you are pivoting to providing a different service from the one that you are providing. First, now you need to re-engage your shareholders, you need to re-engage the employees, you need to re-engage the suppliers, or maybe look for new suppliers, re-engage the community. because that's the critical point. You are changing the direction of your business. And then as well as maybe even if you are closing down, you're shutting down the business, even there, you still have to communicate. Yes, the business is failing, everyone is depressed and all that, but you need to communicate so that you don't know what future holds, right? You might close down the business without communicating with anyone and not doing certain things. Maybe something happened. You might need those people in future. But if you develop call it a shutdown communication plan, then you will be able to communicate with relevant people to say, we tried. This didn't work, whatever, this was the learnings, whatever, this is whatever. We appreciate your support and what. Employees, same thing. Suppliers, same thing. Even government, you need to make sure that if you cease operating, you maybe cancel the licenses. If you have to, you suspend them if you should. Make sure that you submit whatever the documents that you need to submit, retrenchments and all those things. You submit it to the relevant authority. So the frequency of communication, it depends. It depends on the stage that you are at as a business. You might be at the initial stage, which is the project initiation stage. Probably going to communicate more regularly. On the implementation side, maybe it might be less so regular than on the initiation phase. Critical point is critical to communicate regularly as well. And then on the closure side, you need to make sure that all the stakeholders are informed of what's going on and all that. So it might be a once-off communication. It might not be a regular communication at the closure stage. So those are the stages or the frequency of communication. So, but remember, businesses are different. So the communication might be different for different businesses. This is just a guiding tool that you can use as an entrepreneur in your communication strategies, or when you're implementing your project, you can use this as a guide on how you're supposed to communicate. Okay, and then with communication as well, you need to make sure that you know who's supposed to be communicating and the type of communication. Is it the project manager that's going to communicate? I mean, if it's a project activity, you need to use the project manager. If it's a strategic activity, you use the executive or CEO, whatever, the top executive. It might be an activity based. You can use an account manager. And then if now you need a community specialist, I mean, if you are doing a mining project in the communities, you might need a specialist. And on the other side, if you are dealing with suppliers, dealing with maybe communities while you're implementation, it might be business development manager, because they need to develop the business and all that. So they need to continuously engage with the suppliers in the community and all that. So, and then if it's maybe government, generally it goes towards legal compliance. So you need to make sure that you do it the right way. You follow the legal principles and all that. So it might be a legal person. So you need to identify who's supposed to communicate, or the type of stakeholders that you are dealing with, and make sure that the relevant person with the relevant information and who's closer to that stakeholder those are the people who are supposed to be communicating with the stakeholders. So be careful, don't just issue communication for the sake of issuing communication. They must be issued by a relevant person. Right. So that's it from the module, how to communicate with the stakeholders. We spoke about a communication plan, what you need to consider, who should communicate with, how you're supposed to communicate with. So hopefully this lesson will contribute towards your business success. I thank you.